Most people think skipping meals is the body going without. The research says something stranger. It's actually the body switching on, activating a cellular repair system so precise and so consequential that a Nobel Prize was awarded for figuring out how it works. You've been triggering it by accident your whole life. Every cell in your body contains what amounts to a built-in recycling program. Not metaphorically, structurally. There are dedicated molecular machines whose entire function is to find the broken, the redundant, and the worn out inside the cell, wrap them in a membrane, drag them to an internal acid bath, and reduce them to raw components the cell can use again. The word for it is autophagy. The accurate description is the cell eating itself. On purpose. Under instruction. This isn't the body failing. It's the body doing exactly what it was designed to do when the conditions are right. And the conditions are simpler than most people think. Time without food. Here's where the mechanism connects to something you felt, but probably never traced back this far. That mild clarity, the slightly flattened hunger, the curious sense of okayness that sometimes settles in around the 14th or 15th hour of not eating, that's not willpower. Part of what you're noticing is a metabolic state shift. Your cells have moved from building mode into maintenance mode. The recycling has started. You didn't do anything. You just stopped doing something. But before we get to what that actually means for you, what's the machinery, and why does it matter more than most biology you'll ever learn? The discovery took 2 Nobel Prizes and about 30 years of people looking at the same thing without quite seeing it. In the early 1950s, a Belgian scientist named Christian de Duve was studying how insulin acted on liver cells. In the process, he stumbled onto an organelle nobody had described. A membrane-bound sac packed with acid hydrolases, enzymes capable of digesting virtually every class of molecule in the cell. He named it the lysosome. In 1974, that discovery earned him a Nobel Prize. What he also noticed, almost as an aside, was that sometimes cells seemed to be delivering their own internal contents to the lysosome for digestion. He named that process autophagy, from the Greek for self-eating, and then, largely, the field sat still. For almost 3 decades, autophagy remained something cells did. Nobody knew how. Nobody knew exactly why. Nobody knew which genes controlled it, or what turned it on and off, or what happened when it failed. It was described, not explained. Then in the early 1990s, a cell biologist at the University of Tokyo named Yoshinori Osumi decided to study the problem using yeast. He had a philosophy about research. He deliberately looked for unpopular problems. Fewer than 20 papers a year were being published on autophagy at the time. He reasoned that if he could starve yeast cells while blocking the digestion step, jamming the shredder while it's still being fed, the intermediate structures would pile up and he'd finally get a look at the machinery, which is what happened. Starve the yeast, block digestion. The vacuoles filled within hours with small vesicles that had never been there before. He was watching autophagosomes accumulate in real time under a light microscope. By the mid-1990s, his lab had mapped 15 genes essential for the process. In 2016, he received the Nobel Prize for Physiology and Medicine, alone, no co-recipients, which happens in only about 18% of awards in that category. But the prize matters less here than what those 15 genes revealed about you, specifically about what's happening inside every cell in your body right now, and why the timing of your last meal is more consequential than anyone told you. What Osumi's work revealed was that autophagy isn't a passive collapse, it's a program. It runs in stages. Each stage requires specific proteins, specific signals, specific conditions. And the most important of those conditions, in humans, is the one you create every time the gap between your last meal and your next one gets long enough. The cellular switch is called mTOR, mechanistic target of rapamycin, and it functions as one of the primary growth sensors in the body. When nutrients are available, when amino acids are circulating, when insulin is elevated after a meal, mTOR is active. And when mTOR is active, autophagy is suppressed. The cell is in growth mode. Build, synthesize. Expand, cleaning can wait. Your cells, it turns out, are optimists. When food is available, they assume more food is coming. When you stop at eating, that logic inverts. Insulin falls, glucose drops. The liver works through its stored glycogen, typically within 12 to 24 hours, though faster if you exercise that day, slower if dinner was a large bowl of pasta at 10 p.m. As those stores deplete, a second sensor activates, AMPK or AMP-activated protein kinase, which reads the falling energy charge in the cell the way a fuel gauge reads a dropping tank. It inhibits mTOR. And when mTOR goes quiet, the brake on autophagy releases. And what happens next is the part that took 30 years of cell biology to properly see. I want to be precise about the timing here, because this is where a lot of explanations go wrong. In human studies using muscle biopsies and blood markers, autophagy begins to increase measurably somewhere around 14 to 16 hours of fasting, with the more meaningful upregulation appearing closer to the 20 to 24-hour mark. A crossover study of 11 healthy men found autophagy markers nearly doubling by hour 24. The animal data is cleaner. The human data is suggestive but still accumulating. That window matters. It's comfortably beyond the overnight fast, which means millions of people who eat a late dinner and an early breakfast never actually get there. They're feeding the mTOR signal before the break ever comes off. This isn't a criticism. It's just the mechanism. The mechanism doesn't care about your schedule. Once autophagy is running, what actually happens? A double membrane structure, the phagophore, begins to form and expand in the cytoplasm. It curves and grows, engulfing a portion of the cell's contents. Damaged organelles, misfolded proteins, protein aggregates, redundant cellular machinery. Specifically, selectively. There are cargo receptor proteins, P62 is one of the most studied, that tag damaged material for preferential collection. The phagophore seals around its cargo and becomes the autophagosome, a small closed double-walled vesicle roughly half a micron to 2 microns in diameter. That autophagosome then travels along microtubule tracks toward the perinuclear region of the cell, where it docks with a lysosome and fuses. The Nobel Committee's advanced information notes that the autophagosome is transient. In a typical non-polarized cell, liver cells and fibroblasts being the most studied, it exists for roughly 10 to 20 minutes before completing that fusion. 10 to 20 minutes. The entire structure forms, transports, and delivers in less time than it takes to make a cup of coffee. In neurons, where the autophagosome has to travel down an axon that can extend a meter before reaching a lysosome, the journey takes considerably longer, which turns out to be directly relevant to why neurons are so vulnerable when the system starts to fail. What happens next is that the lysosome's acid hydrolases, the same class of enzymes Deduve first identified in the 1950s, digest the contents. Everything inside the autophagosome is broken down to amino acids, fatty acids, nucleotides. These aren't discarded. They're exported back into the cytoplasm and re-enter the cell's metabolic pathways. The cell has fed itself with its own waste. The word for this is recycling. The accurate word is remarkable. That's the short-term picture. But the reason this mechanism matters, the reason it earned 2 separate Nobel Prizes across 2 generations of scientists, has to do with what happens when it goes wrong. Or more precisely, what happens when it goes slow. Have you ever had the experience of running an old computer that hasn't been restarted in weeks? The processes are technically running, but there's accumulated junk in memory, background tasks that have partially stalled, temporary files that should have been cleared months ago. The whole thing just grinds. Your cells have a version of this problem. Proteins misfold during synthesis. It's not a malfunction, it's an inevitability of protein chemistry. Mitochondria accumulate damage over time. Organelles wear out. Without a functioning recycling system running consistently, that material accumulates, which is where the neurodegenerative disease connection comes in, and it's not a tenuous one. Alzheimer's disease is characterized, among other things, by the accumulation of amyloid beta plaques and tau protein tangles in the brain. Parkinson's by the accumulation of alpha-synuclein aggregates, what pathologists call Lewy bodies, in neurons. Huntington's by the accumulation of mutant Huntington protein. All 3 of these disease-defining proteins are autophagy substrates. They're the kind of material autophagy is specifically designed to clear, and multiple lines of evidence now show that autophagic function declines with age. Genome-wide analysis reveals significant transcriptional downregulation of autophagy genes in the aging human brain, which means the accumulation that characterizes these diseases and the decline of the system designed to prevent it are happening on the same timescale. I'll be honest. This is the part I find difficult to sit with. Not because it's uncertain, it's actually one of the more consistent findings in the aging literature, but because of what it implies. We have spent decades and extraordinary resources treating the protein aggregates that characterize these diseases. The amyloid, the alpha-synuclein, the tau, we've treated them as the primary problem. The possibility that they're partly the downstream consequence of a clearance system that slowed down, that the bin wasn't being emptied, not that the bin was producing unusual rubbish, is a reframe the field is still catching up to. Some researchers dispute it. The causal direction isn't fully settled, and that's worth knowing. The debate is real. What the research doesn't say is that fasting prevents Alzheimer's. Let me be precise about that, because this is where the wellness industry takes a real mechanism and sells it back to you as a guarantee. What the evidence does show, clearly from animal models and with increasing support from human data, is that autophagic capacity declines with age, that this decline is associated with the accumulation of toxic protein aggregates, and that fasting is one of the most potent inducers of autophagy known. What you do with that set of facts is yours to work out, but the three facts together are not subtle. The countervailing argument is worth stating plainly. mTOR suppression during fasting also suppresses protein synthesis. These two processes compete for the same switch. The conditions that maximize autophagy, extended fasting, low protein intake, depleted glycogen, are not the conditions that maximize muscle protein synthesis. This is a real trade-off. In healthy young adults, the evidence suggests short-term fasting doesn't produce meaningful muscle loss. In older adults, where both muscle mass and autophagic capacity are already declining, the picture is considerably less clear. Nobody should pretend otherwise. What does appear to hold across age groups is that the mild, periodic activation of autophagy that comes from extending the overnight fast, not multi-day water fasting, not severe caloric restriction, doesn't require a significant trade-off at all. Tell me in the comments, before today, had you heard of autophagy, or is this mechanism genuinely new to you? Yes or no is fine, it changes how I pitch these. The gut-brain axis research did this to me too, years ago. I came out of several days reading papers on it, genuinely unsettled about how much we don't know that our bodies know already. Autophagy has the same quality. It's a mechanism so fundamental, so conserved across species, so precisely engineered that encountering it properly for the first time is slightly humbling. You've been doing this since before you were born, not occasionally, continuously. Every cell in your body is running low-level housekeeping all the time, and fasting turns up the volume on it in ways that nothing else quite replicates. Here's what the honest gap looks like. The precise timing of autophagy induction in humans, when it peaks, how much it varies between individuals, how to measure it accurately in living people, is still not settled. Most autophagy studies in humans use blood markers like LC32 as proxies for what's happening in tissues, and there's ongoing debate about how well those proxies actually reflect autophagic flux. The animal models are much cleaner. Whether every finding in yeast or mice translates exactly to human biology and at what doses and durations is the active frontier of the research. That uncertainty doesn't undermine what we know. It is what we know. Over months and years, the picture that emerges is one of maintenance, not transformation. Not the language that wellness culture uses when it sells autophagy back to you. The detox narrative, the cellular reset, the rejuvenation framing that makes it sound like a spa treatment at the molecular level. The reality is both quieter and more consequential. A quality control system, running on time without food, clearing material that would otherwise accumulate in your cells until it caused problems you wouldn't feel for decades. What the mechanism responds to isn't complicated. It responds to the gap. Not to any particular eating window, not to any supplement, not to anything you buy. The gap between eating and eating again. Extend it to where the mTOR signal drops and the AMPK signal rises and the phagophores start to form. That's the entire instruction set. The thing about a Nobel Prize is that it tends to get handed out for work that reorganized how a field thought about itself. Osumi's work did that. It took something morphologically described but mechanistically opaque and reduced it to genes, proteins, pathways, and logic. Logic that turned out to be conserved from yeast to humans across 1 billion years of evolution. When the same mechanism survives that long without being edited out, it's not because it's optional. Your cells have been eating themselves since the morning you skipped breakfast without meaning to, since every overnight fast you've ever completed without knowing what you were doing. Quietly, methodically, without asking permission. The mechanism has been running the whole time. You just didn't have a name for it.